Hello, BookTube. I've got a bit of a MegaStuff video for you here. I haven't made a MegaStuff video in 2021. In 2020, they were my sort of catch-all video for all the kinds of miscellaneous stuff that might be on my mind, but that don't fit under any one heading. There's plenty of such miscellany that goes on in my life, and then one of the reasons why I kind of shied away from making MegaStuff videos is because I'm already tempted every time I turn on the camera to talk to you to just sort of old coot natter about my aches and pains and the kids these days and whatnot. I thought MegaStuff videos only encourage that. But I've got what I think is a legitimate batch of things to talk to you about right now. And I admit I have a legitimate reason to do it, and that is to distract myself from the news of the day. Because, as all of you know, anywhere in the world, former President Donald Trump is currently on trial in the U.S. Senate as a result of the House of Representatives impeaching him a second time. Because on January 6th, when he was president, he incited a violent mob to march on the U.S. Capitol. That mob breached the Capitol, killed people, raised Trump's flag and took down the American flag, looted the Capitol, wanted to kill more people and chanted about that openly, and told reporters at the scene, we want to kill people, and we're doing this because Donald Trump wants us to. And while it was going on, Trump was gleefully watching the news on TV and not summoning the National Guard to protect the members of Congress. And then he angrily made a video, which was blocked from social media, but not before it could be recorded, praising the rioters, praising the insurrectionist traitors who breached the capital of my country, calling them very special people and telling them he loved them. The U.S. House of Representatives impeached him for inciting insurrection. It's the very first time in history that a U.S. president has been impeached twice in one term, and it is certainly the only time that a U.S. president has been impeached for doing what Donald Trump did on camera in front of the whole world, which was incite a violent insurrection to overthrow the United States government and install himself as an unelected dictator. Why there is a trial, I have no idea. No idea at all. What he did is a federal crime in the District of Columbia. Why we're even doing a show trial in the Senate instead of having him arraigned, arrested, tried, and convicted in the court of the District of Columbia is beyond me. He's a citizen now, and he is indisputably guilty of the charge for which he's being tried in the Senate. He is indisputably guilty. He is on camera attesting to all of it. His minions, the ones he sent to ransack the Capitol and kill his vice president, are on camera saying, we did this because he told us to, and the minute he told us not to, we left. All of them are on camera saying, the reason we didn't cover our faces, the reason we were so brazen about it, is because we fully expected him to pardon us. This Senate trial is going to be incredibly frustrating because the vast majority of Republican senators are going to vote to acquit him. The charge is inciting a violent insurrection. Trump is on camera inciting a violent insurrection. So there is no doubt about the charge. There is no doubt about his guilt. This isn't the same thing as a phone call that only 24 people heard. This is something the whole world saw. There isn't anyone in the world who doesn't know that this charge is true and that Donald Trump is guilty. And yet the Senate is going to vote to acquit him. And that is maddening. Absolutely maddening. Because that means that reality doesn't matter to the neo-Nazis that now control almost half of the United States government. Reality doesn't matter to them. Only crime matters to them. And that deserves a little distraction. I have tried to stay distracted from this story all day. I made a bunch of videos talking to you, and I'm going to make this one talking to you. And I want to start off with a bit of periodicals. We look through periodicals from time to time on this channel. And one of the things we look at, especially in the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement, is the letters page. Because the letters page of a literary journal, it might seem like the most boring thing in the world, but if your book is short, the letters page is typically where the fur is going to fly. You're reading along, I admit, after years and years of loving fights breaking out in letters pages of literary journals. I now read the reviews of any one issue, with kind of sort of one antenna up, wondering if something is going to trigger that. But almost always I am surprised. I almost always never see it coming, unless the reviewer in the review of a book pretty much says that the author of the book is plagiarizing from something else. That occasionally happens, but it's very rare. So I was caught by surprise, not in the TLS, but in the New York Review of Books, with a dust-up in the letters page. And I want to read you both. Sorry, they're not very long, so it won't take long at all to do. I want to read you the salvo and the return fire. So this is a letter from Ruman Alam, who wrote a book just recently. We saw it on this channel. About a couple in New York a family who take on a bed and breakfast. They take on an Airbnb, and then something horrible happens in the world that causes the original owners of the Airbnb to descend back on their own property. And so all these people are sort of thrown together. I really like it. I really liked the book. I thought it was really good. And the New York Review of Books got Ruth Franklin to review it. She's terrific. She's a very smart reviewer and a practiced biographer. And the review didn't sit well with Ruman Alam. So I'm going to read you the letter that he sent in. I'm delighted the review chose to write about my most recent book, but troubled by the methods your critic deployed. The review relies heavily on material that's not the book under discussion, notably a profile of me in New York Magazine. I'm confident your defense will be to note that critic Ruth Franklin is a biographer, and this is how she works. I can't see what's gained in a review by noting the name of my husband, except that it clarifies I'm gay. Perhaps, hence, that, quote, barometer exquisitely calibrated to signifiers of social class, fashion houses, just trendy enough restaurants, interiors detailed with the loving eye of a copywriter of a high-end furniture catalog. Quote, that's a quote from Ruth Franklin's review. I certainly can't see what's gained by noting my husband's profession. The implication is clear, but I wonder how many colleagues who are women would feel about a suggestion that a male spouse's work had something to do with their artistic output. The review quotes the New York at length, as though the reporter's analyses of my mission, as though the reporter's analysis were my mission statement. It's not really to make a point about the novel under discussion, but about me. I told that magazine 2 anecdotes touching on my experience as a brown person. But Franklin feels the book's warm reception negates my entire experience of life. And here he quotes from the review again. The excitement which greeted Leave the World Behind, that's the name of the novel, the excitement which Leave the World Behind has been greeted by many readers and critics, including its receiving a National Book Award nomination, suggests that the establishment may not be so immutable after all. The implication there from Ruth Franklin's review being the immutability being against brown people. The standard criticism that the establishment is firmly entrenched in favor of white writers may not be completely true. That the establishment may not be as immutable as that. That's what the quote means. And then Alam goes on. This is a canard white people love to trot out. In such bad faith, it doesn't warrant a response. If the National Book Foundation had the power to end racism, it would have done so by now. I did not want to write this letter. I know it looks like sour grapes. But I can handle being told that my book sucks. I look at Goodreads, for Christ's sake. What I'm less equipped to handle is reading in the pages of a magazine I so admire that I'm a superficial faggot laboring under a delusion of racial persecution. That is Ruman Alam's letter of complaint to the New York Review of Books about a review of his book. And, of course, Ruth Franklin couldn't possibly let such a letter go, so she writes a response and they run it. And here's her response. I am saddened that Ruman Alam read my review of his novel as a personal attack. It is a normal critical practice, and not only for those of us who also write biography, to use material an author has said or written elsewhere as a way of illuminating the work under review. Indeed, Alam himself used a quote from an interview to open his recent essay about Lori Moore's latest book. I began my review by describing Alam's depiction of female characters in his first 2 novels and briefly cited a 2018 interview in which he discussed the challenges of writing about women. The next 3,000 words of my piece are devoted to an extensive and detailed analysis of Alam's fiction, primarily the new novel, and the questions it raises. Only in the last several paragraphs does mention appear of the recent profile of Alam in New York Magazine, in which he spoke at length about his motivations as a fiction writer as well as about his private life. Since he shares details about his family in print as well as on social media, his objection to the inclusion of such information is unexpected. Nowhere does the review suggest that the critical commercial success of Alam's new novel negates his entire life experience. In the profile, Alam mentioned that more than 20 years ago he read an issue of The New Yorker focused on writers who were Indian and objected to their marginalization as Indian writers rather than writers full stop. As a writer who has worked hard to combat bias in the literary world, I sympathize. While recent years have seen real change in the cultural landscape, there is no shortage of work yet to be done. That's the exchange here, and I don't know. Maybe I'm not doing the reading justice, but I think you might agree with me that Rumaan Alam comes off much worse in this exchange. He comes off horribly. He comes off, in fact, as a whiny baby who is airing sour grapes in the letters page of the New York Review of Books. For a couple of reasons. And one of them won't be obvious from this exchange. You would have to read Ruth Franklin's review. But one of the reasons why he comes off poorly is because he, in the final line of his letter here, he grossly mischaracterizes Ruth Franklin's review. In fact, not only mischaracterizes her review, but slanders her by calling her a shrill homophobe. There is nothing at all in her review that justifies the line, what I'm less equipped to handle is reading in the pages of a magazine I so admire that I'm a superficial faggot laboring under a delusion of racial persecution. That's a huge charge, a massively personal charge, and there's nothing like that in the review. And the point that Ruth Franklin makes sort of subtly in her response is definitely warranted, which is that Rumaan Alam has talked about his personal life and sexual and racial identity, let's just say, extensively. He has talked about it extensively, not just in one New York Magazine interview, but also on social media. He has talked about those things extensively, almost to the point where you would be justified in saying that he has made those things part of his brand, that he is brown, that he is gay. Those things are inescapable. He has helped to make them inescapable. He doesn't have to tweet about them, and he doesn't have to give interviews. And in interviews, he could talk about his craft. He has put those things out there. And as Ruth Franklin points out, he has also used things like that in, you got 4,000 words to write about an author. You're going to go looking for their Paris Review interview. You're going to go looking for things they've said to help round out the picture. A review for something like the New York Review of Books is not just a standalone 800-word review of one book. It's meant to be kind of a here we are now overview of the author as a public persona and all of their work. That's what makes these things so hard to write. But aside from the fact that Ruth Franklin, I think, is quite right to point out that is fair game. If you're the one who puts it out there, it's fair game. And aside from the fact that Rumaan Alam, again, keep in mind, I like both these authors. I think Rumaan Alam is a fantastic novelist and also a very good book critic, and I love Ruth Franklin's work. I like both of them. I don't have a dog in this race, but it's grossly unfair of him, just grossly unjust of him. That final line is a slap in the face. And it's fodder for the kind of reader who thinks that Rumaan Alam, in addition to putting his personal life out there, has been trading on it for some sort of, racial persecution complex. That you put these issues out there and then you complain about them. It's the exact trap that culture war critics will accuse people like Rumaan Alam of laying. They'll say, this is why you do that, to render yourself uncriticizable. Because if anybody mentions any of the stuff that you put out there, they're a racist or a homophobe or both. But in addition to all that, which makes this so interesting, I also want to make a broader point, and this is for our conversational purposes, but it's also directed at the writers who are listening to me right now. I know there are a good 30 writers who are listening to me right now. A couple of them have won the National Book Award, and several of them would like to. I want to make a point here that I cannot stress enough. And I assure you, if I had a room full of my fellow book critics. They would all agree with me. We wouldn't agree on anything else, but we would agree on this. I want to stress this beyond any doubt. If you are a writer and your book is reviewed in the New York Review of Books or the Bergen County Shopper or anything in between, and you feel an impulse to complain about it, to write a letter into the journal and complain about it, take a stiff drink and don't write that letter. There's only one circumstance in which that letter is permissible, and even then, get a friend to do it. Don't do it yourself. The one circumstance in which that is possible is if you have written a work of nonfiction or maybe a historical work of fiction, and the reviewer gets a fact wrong that is germane to the book. If a reviewer gets a fact wrong, then the reviewer should be corrected. Now, readers are going to correct them anyway. So even then, a letter directly from you or even indirectly from you is not necessary. Readers are going to correct them anyway. Or the journal is going to learn about it and correct them in the next issue. Factual errors, maybe. What he does here, anything else that falls under that umbrella, any reason other than that why you might dislike a review is sour grapes. It doesn't just come off that way. It is sour grapes. It looks at the vast football stadium full of aspiring and low-tier authors who dream all day and all night of getting a full-length review in the New York Review of Books and just urinates all over them. It is the definition of sour grapes to complain about the 3,000-word review your book got in the New York Review of Books. So the main point of this exchange of letters, the thing I want to stress here to the writers who are listening to me, is don't ever write that letter. Don't ever do it. There is no way it ends up making you look good. None. So don't do it. If you think a reviewer has been unfair to you, take a stiff drink and walk it off. Don't write a letter, because you're going to look bad. and it's going to stick. I mean, I am a book reviewer, and I'm going to read Ruman Alm's next book thinking, okay, Princess, what aspect of this book are we not allowed to criticize? Even though that's not what he's like. I'm still going to view it that way. I'm going to reflexively want to view it that way because I saw this exchange, and that exchange does not reflect well on him. So that's part one of our little MegaStuff video here. Part two is a comic book thing, because I know you people can't get enough of that. Once again, there was a new graphic novel that was out in stores. And once again, I was faced with the dilemma of my comic shop. I like them, but they're not on my route. They're not anywhere near my route. They're nothing that I can fold into other errands, which means I would have to go all the way there, risking COVID exposure the whole time. Go there, risking COVID exposure the whole time, and then come all the way back, risking COVID exposure the whole time. For that one thing, for that one errand. So I don't tend to go. But I still look at the forthcoming lists of things that are coming up. I still do that. And when I see items that I really want, collected items, I never buy single issues anymore. When I see a collected item that I want, I have developed a new pattern. I'm hoping that it holds true. It certainly seems to be working. Because the fact that I can't fold a comic shop into my route does not hold true for my surly houseboy, who can often do that. And who is willing to do that even when it means going to the local Barnes & Noble here in Boston, where I get a hefty discount. A discount that's often heftier than even the discount online sites for graphic novels and collected editions. He has taken to being willing, it might not last, to fetching those things for me. And as a result, I have started to come up with a dream list of things that I want. Now, we've already seen one of those with that great collection of Jose Luis Garcia Lopez Superman artwork. And here's another one. Superman in the 50s in this trade paperback with a newly commissioned cover. There's Superman on the front. That's a new illustration. And then the back has an old illustration. There is Superboy. And Krypto the Superdog in his very first appearance. That is from the first appearance of Krypto the Superdog. And this is just a full-color collection of Superman adventures from the whole course of the 1950s. Most of the interior artwork, great many of the covers are by the great Kurt Swan, but most of the interior artwork is done by an artist named Wayne Boring, who did a great amount of work to give Superman a kind of larger-than-life iconic look, but it doesn't appeal to me at all. because in order to make Superman iconic, he made him stiff. So in Wayne Boring artwork, Superman very often seems like simply a moving statue. How would I get you a good example? Maybe not. Maybe not quickly. But no, I might not be able to do it quickly. But his artwork is mostly all through here. And whoever assembled this issue, boy oh boy, they picked some winners, some absolute winners. There's an adventure here where a boy's rocket crashes to Earth. Most of the stories in here involve extraterrestrials crashing to Earth in one way or another. Oh, in the story where the boy's rocket crashes to Earth, it turns out the boy is not an extraterrestrial. He was the son of an isolated astronomer on Earth who had no connection with the outside world and saw a massive meteorite heading to Earth and thought Earth is doomed. So he built an experimental rocket and sent his boy off into space. An exact reverse of what Superboy's father did. Jor-El sends his son off when he thinks Krypton is doomed. But because the scientists had been in isolation, he had no idea that Superboy even existed out in the world. Superboy stops the meteorite, and the scientist begs Superboy, can you go and find my son? I launched him off into space. I have no idea where he is. And eventually, the boy's rocket ship crashes back to Earth, and he seems to have superpowers. Very similar to Superman's. So he decides to call himself Superman Jr. And they have adventures together, and there's a plot twist that causes him to have to leave Earth. He is important to me, only appears that one time. He's important to me because in my fan fiction reworking of the Legion of Superheroes, from a collection of super teens from 1,000 years in Superman's future, he is one of them. The Legion goes backward in time and brings Superman Jr. forward in time to join the Legion, same as they do Superboy. Only they're very different in personality. Superman Jr. is arrogant. He wears epaulets and cuffs and laces and whatnot. And also, he insists that everyone call him Superman. Once he realizes Superman isn't around anymore, he insists that everyone call him Superman, not Superman Jr. So it's kind of a running joke in my fan fiction that the other Legionnaires refer to him as Junior when he's not around. They call him Superman or S-Man when he's there, but he is widely known as Junior when he's not around because he's not all that likable. There's another story in here where a character, again, a rocket ship falls to Earth, and it's a man who seems, the circumstantial evidence seems to suggest that he was Superboy's older brother. Superman's older brother on Krypton, and that Jor-El sent him off to Earth first, but that he got sidetracked and was in suspended animation, comes to Earth after Superman is established. He has superpowers, but they are dramatically weaker than Superman's. He can't fly on his own. He's invulnerable, but not really. He's just tougher than a normal person. He's stronger than a normal person, but not by all that much. And the issue is really kind of charming, where Superman has to come up with a whole bunch of ways to make it look like his older brother, quote unquote, is outdoing him, because it would be awful for an older brother to be outdone by his younger brother. It turns out at the end of that story that character is not from Krypton. He made a way station on Krypton before he came to Earth. And he is from another planet that does have a higher gravity and whatnot, so he does have superpowers. That isn't a myth. They're just much weaker than Superman's, and he leaves. He leaves Earth. And there's also a story in here where 3 Kryptonians, adult Kryptonians, criminals, come to Earth. And they have Superman powers. And if they didn't fall to fighting each other, I don't know how that story would have ended, but they do, and Superman locks them in suspended animation, sends them off into space. So space is just crawling with these superpowered people, which is kind of interesting. This volume also introduces Supergirl, who's not a phony, not an ersatz Kryptonian, not a villain. She is not only another survivor of the planet Krypton, but it turns out the big revelation at the end of her first appearance is that her father and Superman's father were brothers. They're cousins. Of all the people on Krypton, a blood relative of his actually makes it to Earth. And he immediately consigns her to an orphanage. let's not talk about that. In other words, this volume really gives you a sense of how much was happening in the Superman mythos during that one decade. And naturally, the story that I centered on, not Brainiac, not Mr. Mxyzptlk, not Lex Luthor, not any of that. Naturally, the story that I was happy to see in here is not a Superman story at all. It's a Superboy story. Because Superboy was a huge hit for DC during the 50s. And it's the story where he meets Krypto, where he meets his dog from Krypton. And Krypto he's unpredictable, he's unreliable, he's super powered, but what are you going to do with a super powered dog? And at the end of the story, Superboy realizes, there he is, there's a dreamy Superboy, look at that. He realizes that although he loves his dog, it's going to be a headache for him. And he goes out to the super doghouse that he's built for Krypto the next morning, and the dog is gone. And Superboy's supervision shows that he's just wandering around the galaxy. He's an indestructible dog. He's just wandering around the galaxy. And Superboy says, Krypto, my pal, the only dog of my own I ever had. Maybe he'll come back once in a while just to say hello. And the image is absolutely wonderful. I remember seeing this for the first time when I was a wee tadpole, and I loved it. Look at that image. He's holding the collar and looking off into space, and he's completely sad. And maybe I'll see him again sometime, and it's the end with a question mark, opening the door for fans to say, we want more of Krypto. And of course they did. Of course they did. They wanted a lot more of Krypto. So he got adventures of his own up the wazoo. But this was absolutely delightful. Now, it was, I admit, extra delightful to get it for pretty much 50% off, but I would have taken this anyway. It was delightful to get this. And I said during this incredibly long peroration, I really can't make a 15-minute video. I just can't do it. I said that I don't really get single issues anymore, but that doesn't mean I'm not interested in single issues. That's what this next thing is, because I got a box in the mail, and I'm pretty sure I know what this is. Now, some of you are going to say that this is a violation of rule number 1. Rule number 1 on this channel is don't send me a book. But this, if you could scrutinize the envelope, you would see that this is from Mark Richardson up in Vermont, and Mark Richardson gets to violate rule number 1 whenever he wants to. Actually, pretty much any of my brethren and sisters in the OGBG get to violate rule number 1 whenever they want to. Now, I think I know what part of this is, because I'm pretty sure he's told me. Well, oh no, but there's something else in here. Okay, so let's deal with the something else first. Oh. A package of MegaStuff Oreos. That ought to last me 15 minutes or so. Thank you so much. The Richardson family knows the way to my heart. It's straight through MegaStuff Oreos. Although, not to get sappy or sentimental here, but I have to say to you what I've said to them, which is that much as I love these things, I would so much rather Frida and I were enjoying them there, up at Old Stonebuck. I would so much rather that, but that's okay. Sooner or later that will happen. So what do we have here? Oh, right, okay. Okay, fantastic. I don't go to my local comic shop. I don't get single issues, but there is one comic book property that I would very much want if I did, and that's the Legion of Superheroes, the aforementioned team of superpowered teenagers set 1,000 years in the future. I love the Legion. I have loved them in almost all of their incarnations. And they currently have an ongoing title from DC Comics that I don't particularly love. The writer, Brian Michael Bendis, has taken it upon himself to do a lot of major restructuring and changing things. That's not his right to do. These aren't his characters. He is a caretaker. Doesn't get to take a wrecking ball to concepts that are 50 years old. So I'm kind of hoping that when he leaves, sooner or later, the pile of cocaine will be gone, and then he will leave the Legion. He's no interest in it whatsoever. I'm kind of hoping that when he leaves the Legion, I expect it will be in 2 or 3 issues, that either DC Comics will shutter the comic and there just won't be a Legion after Brian Michael Bendis, or that they will declare his run non-continuity. Even if they do it softly, even if they do a soft reboot, but they could easily do a hard reboot. The Legion has been rebooted many, many times. It'd be nice if these changes just went away. Not for non-progressive reasons, but because those of us who've been reading the Legion for 50 years have as much of a right to say that we own it as Brian Michael Bendis does. He doesn't get to change. Anyway, I've been sent 2 Legions, 2 issues of Legion of Superheroes. The first one is Legion of Superheroes number 12. I haven't read this at all. There is the Gold Lantern, one of Brian Michael Bendis' really good creations for this comic. What a cover that is. in Legion lore, for most of the time that since Keith Giffen established this idea, Green Lanterns are not welcome on Earth. A lot of fans wondered, okay, so this is the 23rd century, the Guardians of the Universe must still be around, the Green Lantern Corps must still be patrolling the universe. Why are there no Green Lanterns in this world? Eventually, Keith Giffen said, he dropped a dark hint saying they're not welcome on Earth, and didn't explain it, and writers have been elaborating on that ever since. But in this case, I would gladly read this. We'll see. Although I haven't been a big fan of Bendis, I'm not a big fan of his. I haven't much objected to his run on the Legion. It hasn't been all that bad. There's been stupid, gratuitous race swapping and gender swapping. And Bendis, like so many other writers who ought to know better, doesn't seem to realize how insulting that is. That has always been insulting. From the days when the new Wildcat was a Hispanic woman, purely to check boxes. Without these writers don't seem to realize that just slapping something like that is insulting. It's not a sign of progressiveness. It's not a sign of inclusiveness. It's telling a whole race or ethnicity of people, you can have our cast-offs. Anyway, I will look forward to this. I remember the last issue vividly. So, but this other Legion thing is something I have a little bit more trepidation about, because I'm not following the rest of it. DC Comics, like Marvel Comics, has an absolutely unbreakable addiction to mega events that cross over all of their ongoing titles, usually with a major plot point in every issue so that you have to buy them all, and they're usually just unbelievably boring. They end up being unbelievably boring. There's one going on in Marvel now, the Black King, the King in Black, and there's one going on in DC now, Future State. And I'm not interested in either one of them. I'm not following either one of them, but they are sprawling over every title, and including the Legion. This is Legion of Superheroes Future State. Is this number 1? Yeah, this is Legion of Superheroes Future State number 1. Now, I don't know how much of this, I mean, bless the Richardsons, they just grabbed something that had Legion of Superheroes on it. Thank you. But I don't know how much of this is going to make any sense to me, because I don't know how much of it is going to rely on the rest of Future State. I guess I could look at the Wikipedia page for Future State and maybe read up on it. We shall see. I'll give it a try. So, 2 new Legion issues to read. Fantastic. New comic book day is tomorrow. So there you go. That is a MegaStuff video. A whole bunch of stuff, including a box from Vermont. Wonderful. So I'm going to wrap this up for now, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.